won't stop until I start to stand out.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to LorcanaCast, the happiest podcast on earth. We are here to talk all about Lorcana and trading card games, and this is going to be a super fun episode because we are going to talk a lot about Star Wars Unlimited and a lot of their big announcements on their OP kit, the fact that they're going to have a pre-release set. They announced the price for their stuff, the rarities, the pull rates, all kinds of things. So we want to talk a little bit about how Star Wars Unlimited is doing things different from Lorcana and what we hope to see Lorcana make adjustments for in the future sets, because some of these are actually pretty cool. And a lot of people have already said on the internet, like, they would kind of like to see Lorcana do some of these things. But before we get into that, we are here with myself. I'm Sugi, your co-host, with Greg. How are you doing, my man?
How's it going? Happy to be back one more time. And fun fact, I've seen 2 Star Wars films my entire life, so maybe I gotta get on that.
Oh boy, you're gonna need to fix that. And Chris, Mr. Bates, and Mr. Scaffman are out this week with their families, so they're gonna be spending some quality time while we talk about card games. Yes, so they're gonna miss out on all this fun stuff. But we have a special guest. Your Dead Next Turn is joining us. So Tim from Your Dead Next Turn is here. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, and I'm with Greg. I actually just saw the Star Wars movies literally the other day with my son. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Did you enjoy them?
I did. He's actually obsessed. So, it's
You're like, what have I done?
Yeah. Like he now wants, he traded his room from a Pokemon room. Now he wants Star Wars everything. So.
Ooh.
Okay. I think the silver lining for me about having not watched Star Wars before is that I feel like I may be in the minority here where I play card games for mechanics almost exclusively. So to me, these are just a bunch of characters on cards, and we can get into that soon.
Oh man, making the Magneto, he's just an input thing. He's not a character. Okay, all right.
Exactly.
Well, before we go on, Tim, why don't you tell our listeners who you are and where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So again, I'm Tim from Your Dead Next Turn. I've been playing TCGs for a very long time. My channel is on YouTube and Twitch. We were a budget commander, but lately, it's just me because my wife always works and my friends always work. So it's just me and my son, and we got into Pokemon. Now my son is obsessed with Lorcana because he sees all the Disney, and so we do a lot of Lorcana, do a lot of Magic, play some Pokemon, all on there. So you can find us again on YouTube and Twitch.
Okay. That's awesome. Actually, your knowledge of Magic is going to come into play here as well in this conversation. So as we said at the start, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Unlimited and other trading card games, specifically focusing on the alternate arts or variants in cards. So, for example, Tim can attest to this and talk a little bit about it. Magic has common, uncommon, rare, mythic rare, and then depending on the set, they'll have different types of alternate arts and full art foils and whatnot. So have you gotten anything from like the new Wilds of Eldraine that came out a couple weeks ago?
So I did. So that's one of the things I love about Magic, that got me into Magic to begin with, is just all the different arts. It's kind of a big thing on our channel. When I'm playing with our friend Jared and Sadie, they usually, and my wife, we joke about full arts. We went to a convention not too long ago, and we played a kid who came in with a binder, and all he had was full arts. And that was like his most prized possession, was just having all the different rarities. And I know that was one thing my son was kind of upset about with Lorcana, is because he's been watching me play these TCGs since he was born. He wanted the enchanted cards and didn't understand why he wasn't getting them in packs. And I had to tell him how they were really rare. And he's like, well, I want them. And I was like, unfortunately, I don't want to pay $200 for the full art different variant that you want. So.
Oh yeah, that's a very valid point. And Greg, what are some of the trading card games you like to play and like their alternate or variants in terms of artwork from like, the standard card you could pull in a booster?
Yeah, so one of the games I've played throughout the majority of my life has been Card Fight Vanguard. It's one that immediately comes to mind. And of course, like many other Japanese card games, this comes with an interesting bit of texture on the card. So some people call it like hypergloss, where like they're like smooth to the touch, but like sometimes there's like raised like indents on the cards, and sometimes those cards are the same art but with that extra foiling on it. But there's also secret rares, FFRs, which they put like a frame around the card, which is really cool. But yeah, aside from that, those are some extra looking cards. If anyone is interested, just look up Card Fight Vanguard SPs, maybe a video to see exactly how the foiling process works. But I love that approach to alternate arts in card games.
I love those SPs. And then sometimes you have the foil stamped signed cards.
Yep, that's right. So some select cards in Card Fight Vanguard are like that. And then, of course, in Vice Schwartz, which is like kind of like an anime collab thing, they're stamped and signed cards from these voice actors / voice actresses that are in the anime shows that you all know and love. Can you imagine if we got something like that for Lorcana? Like, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, and I was about to say that. I know my local game store is really obsessed with the One Piece, and even they have different variants and different alternate art cards and stuff like that we're just not seeing with Lorcana. That Star Wars Unlimited is crushing it on. So,
Greg, you're gonna love this. I love Weiss Schwartz, and I have a foil stamped Kirito and Asuna, both Kiritos from set 1 and set 2. From Sword Art Online. I was like, those are some of my favorite cards ever. It's just like, oh man, foil stamped signatures from voice artists. Take my money.
Exactly. My Weiss SPs are in those little Ultra Pro jewel cases that you find. Of course, got to keep them pristine, and like, of course, you can hang them in a museum. They're just so pretty.
I need to send those in to get graded. Anyways, we digress. But that's kind of the fun of trading card games, is trading the cards. And I want to say this right up front. This is not meant to slight Lorcana or throw Lorcana under the bus. I just wanted to bring up the fact that we're seeing a lot of card games promote alternative arts, alternative rarities, alternative pieces of artwork on a promotional card or an organized play card. And something that happened at one of my local events where I live is we had a raffle for a card in a store, and there just seemed to be a little bit of like, okay, whatever. We've even talked amongst ourselves that we find it interesting that some of the organized play cards are foil cards that are identical to the foil cards in a booster pack minus a stamp. And I'm not saying that's good or that's bad. It's, to me personally, it's a little uninteresting, because it's like, I've got foil like Mickeys and foil Yzmas and foil Heiheis from my boosters. Someone else can have my, promo card, or maybe I'll trade it for something else or whatever, because like I don't have any need for it. I've got plenty of it in mechanical terms, other than that one stamp, of course.
It's especially funny if you look at the secondary market value of the cards. You can actually mathematically calculate how much you're paying for a league promo stamp on the bottom of your card, which I find to be pretty funny.
Exactly, and I was about to say the same thing. I'm with you. Is when I get the promo card, it was the same exact card I already had 4 or 5 of. And the only difference was that little stamp, nothing else.
Yeah. You can talk about this a little bit too. Remember F&M promos that were like full art foils, like totally unique, stuff like that. Did you play back in F&M days?
Oh, no, my local game store still does that. Okay. So yeah, that's one thing I do miss, that Lorcana kind of missed on. I understand where they were kind of going with it. With the enchanted rarity, they were trying to make it more rare. And that was the only things that had alternate arts. But they could have done something special with promos and stuff like that to get more people in and more people at events. Because I know, like I was saying before the show, my local game store, once they sold out a product, the attendance kind of went down. Because people were just going to get product and get the cards, that there wasn't anything special. And I know the local game store owner was giving away those promo cards as like gifts, as like raffles. and no one really cared. They usually just were like, oh, I already have 5 of these. I already have 4 of these. Where with Magic and other games, it's kind of like, oh, if it's a promo, like I want it.
Yeah.
And
because it's like legitimately promotional. It's unique and distinct in its own ways.
exactly, just like a Gen Con and stuff like that. They want the cards. They want that promo to have that stamp on it, these collectors. Yes, you're going to have that third market person who wants to flip it and stuff like that. You kind of can't get rid of it. But you will have those people who want to collect. So like me, I like to collect the whole set. I like to play it. I like to collect it. And same with my wife where, yeah, we want the promo, but we also want it just to have. And I think if you had the alternate arts and you had like special promos, you'd have more people wanting to go to events or promotions just to get cards to have a chance at those.
Now here's a question for you. Once this is good news for our listeners. The official Disney Lorcana social media accounts have stated that the reprint that was supposed to be slated for early 2024 has been pushed up to holiday season of 2023. So we are going to see a reprint of the first chapter, and they've said they're going to be doing a reprint of Set 2, The Rise of the Floodborn, which is great. Do you think, Tim, that will bring people back to the store, or is the damage already done?
Personally, what I think is going to happen, right? Because I'm excited. I'm going to Disney World with my family during release, so I'm hoping to get some. Yeah, I'm hoping. But what I honestly think it's going to do is people are going to be torn, right? They're going to go to these stores. They're going to see both boxes. They're going to ask, what's the newer set, right?
Right.
And most of the time, people want the newer set. Like, for example, my friend owns a local game store. He tells me all the time, he puts old sets on clearance because he gets so much product. And especially with Magic, where they're pumping out these sets almost monthly now.
Yeah.
That when the new set comes, he has to clearance the other boxes just to get them off his shelf. So I think that's going to be one of the things is you're going to have people buy the reprint, one, because they couldn't get it to begin with. But then the people who already had a chance to get cards and to get product, you're going to actually see them go and get the second set. The only thing you might see a change in is buying singles online, because hopefully with the reprints, they're going to drop in value that people are finally going to finish decks that they wanted to make.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path there, because for people who've bought the product like myself, I'm going to get set 2. I'm not buying any set 1. And then I do agree. I think singles are going to pick up quite a bit, just because there will be more product in the wild. If you only need 10 cards to finish your deck, why buy a booster box? Why not just buy singles?
Exactly. And that's kind of like what I am right now. So I have my Ruby Emerald evasive deck completely done just from the starter and then just getting cards, right? And then I am working on a Steel Emerald, and I'm missing 4 singles, and I just don't want to pay for Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. That's $30 a pop right now.
Yeah.
And hopefully when the second set comes out, I can get those, and then I have 2 decks I can run. But then I also know that people might not buy singles, because the same thing happens with every game, is when a new set comes, they tweak decks they already have. So when the new set comes, people might just buy the new set and just fill the void with cards that they needed to fill in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The reprint's really interesting to me because, of course, from the standard, I guess, economical perspective, it's like, okay, well, there's going to be more of these cards that enter the market. The logical approach is that the prices of the singles are probably going to go down. But I'm actually wondering if this might be a scenario of like supply creating its own demand in a sense, because, I know people, and I'm sure that there are many more out there that were interested in Lorcana, but of course they kind of turned away due to the launch of Lorcana, with the low supply and the high prices and the lack of product availability. So I'm interested in seeing, well, first of all, how big this reprint seems to be, because of course Ravensburger is not confirming the number up front. But it's also like, okay, well, how many people are going to come out of the woodwork and actually start playing this game? So I'm interested in seeing, of course, from the money market perspective, how that's going to shake out. I'd imagine.
So I'm with you a little bit, Greg, and I'm also against you. So let me explain. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I'm with you that Ravensburger thinks that there will be people that come out of the woodwork. That's kind of like I was saying, was those players who couldn't get product, right? You also, I feel like it scared away some people.
Yeah.
Like me and my buddy, we talked at one of the Lorcana event, and he said it the best that I could ever say. Is he was like, Tim, I'm afraid that Lorcana will die fast because those people that had the hype all the way from D23 when they announced it to now, right? People were excited about it. You had almost a full year to get product. And I'm sorry, Disney is multi-million dollars that you can get, and you slap it on a card, you're telling me kids don't want to play. As soon as my son saw that I was going to buy a Disney card game, he said, see you later, Pokemon. Dad, we need to go get Lorcana. That we went everywhere on release dates trying to find product. And then when you don't have product, it kind of scares people away. So like a lot of people got the starter decks, but I have friends that don't even have starter decks yet. And they're like, yeah, this game's fun. I wish I could play, but I don't have cards. And I'm like, hopefully you get some, man. But I think that scared some people away because they couldn't get products. So they were like, oh, well, this will probably happen again to us and happen again.
Or like even the interesting point of like, suppose you can get some cards, right? A starter deck and a couple packs, but then you end up at a local store and, people there are playing fully built decks, like that's pretty disheartening, like especially with the lack of availability.
And I saw that when my local game store happened, I felt really bad to some of these players because I was going every week to 3 local game stores who were giving product away. So like on Friday I would go to one, Saturday I would go to another, Sunday I would go to another. And I ended up just building my deck how I wanted it to. And then I would go back to an event against somebody who had just a starter deck and maybe like 1 or 2 cards they added to it. And it would just not be fun. Like I would kill him and I would destroy him in 5 minutes. And people were just so discouraged, like, oh man. And I would have to apologize because I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. And I know there was one guy at the local game store that he went and bought all the singles that he wanted. And he had a complete Ruby Amnes deck that was just cleaning house. And he would sit at a table against an opponent and was just like, I'm very sorry. And people were like, oh, cool. I got to go against this guy, or I got to go against this deck now. Like, and then the following week would happen, they'd face that player again or somebody else, and they would just get discouraged. And then they would just be like, all right. And then you would never see them at the event again. And I think like that's what you were saying, Greg, is like some of these people just that didn't get product just kind of lost interest because they were just like, oh, well, I can't get product to make myself better. And all I'm rocking is the $16 starter deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. It's tricky because like I try and cycle through decks, and if it performed like overperforms, I won't bring that one back. I don't want to like disincentivize people to play. I do want to try new things. But I do hope that people find like, hey, like, does that player who built the Ruby Amethyst deck, does that all as they ever played? Do they keep coming back week after week? Or do they like,
oh yeah, he comes every single week.
Oh, okay. So they're not really trying to help the community. They're just like flexing. Okay.
And like one of the things is like our local game store owner, he made it nice. So like instead of like a normal event that he runs like for Magic or Pokemon or Flesh and Blood, if your record was undefeated, you didn't lose a match the whole time, you didn't get extra packs. You would just get put in. You would still get put in with everybody in a raffle, so it didn't matter. He was like, it's just casual play.
Mm-hmm.
But like you would have some people who went and spent all that money with a whole new world that would mill people out constantly and stuff like that. And I'm like, and you had a lot of kids that were there that were just with their parents, that were just rocking one of the starter decks.
Yeah.
And it was like I know, for example, I went against a couple of kids and I just let them win. Like,
That's awesome.
I just was like, hey, it's a little kid. I really don't care. Like, I want them to like the game. I can win at any point, but I'm going to let them win. And I know a couple of, like, my son who went to all the events with me, like, a couple people literally told my son, like, I'm gonna let you win. Or it would come up to me and was like, hey, Tim, I'm gonna let your son win. And I'm like, you don't have to. And they're like, no, we want to. Like, these kids are the next generation. And that's one of the things I like about Lorcana is you have this younger generation of card games where Magic players and Pokemon players and everything else has been just people who've been playing since they came out. Mm-hmm. Where with Disney, it's a lot of younger kids trying to play. And I think that's the thing that's going to keep it alive is you got the younger kids who, hey, I want Elsa. Like my daughter wanted Elsa everything. I had to get her the Elsa box, the Elsa sleeves for her deck, everything. Everything was Elsa.
Yeah, it's a very real possibility that this game becomes the nostalgia, the nostalgia card game, for the future generation, which is definitely really interesting to think about. And it's actually kind of hard to like envision just in hindsight, because like we have like the Magic and the Pokemon just like being that long ago. But I mean, there's a very real possibility that happens for this game as well.
Well, that's what I did in a video, Greg, is I put a video up on my YouTube channel the other day that I was like, the question was, can Lorcana dethrone Magic? No. Magic has been... I'm with you. So I think yes and no. So the reason why is, first off, Magic, I feel like, is losing its thing with every single month coming out with a new set. It's just now it's getting ridiculous where as a Magic player who's been playing since almost 98, like 1998, I've been playing Magic. And now just every single month paying $150 for the new set is just absolutely absurd. And they're coming out with all these Magic across the universe and everything like that. It's making people not want to buy the game as much. And you see it at every event, like the same crowd, the same age group. And I think after a certain amount of time, people are going to start trying to find new games. And I've seen it just at the local game stores myself is like, yes, you still have the bigger people, but you don't see younger people. So like Greg was saying, like you might have this as a nostalgia game where we grew up on Pokemon and Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Where kids now, especially kids like my age all the way up to 10, Disney Lorcana has been their childhood. So they're going to support this game no matter what, just like we did when Pokemon first came out. Because I remember when Pokemon first came out, I saw it on TV. I had to get every card. And I wish I still had some of those cards. And I know my wife does too, because sometimes she gets mad when she sees the price of like the original Charizard that she's like, I used to have that card. And now it's going for like 8 to...
Funny how life happens, right?
Yeah. But that's what I think is going to happen here. So I don't think it's going to dethrone Magic. I just think the new generation is going to change this card game.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because of that nostalgic factor.
That's what I wanted to revisit as well, where it's like, okay, the question of, can Lorcana dethrone Magic is pretty interesting in my mind, because I think they're both going for royalty of like different countries, like they're competing in like separate lanes, at least the way that I'm trying to see it. And of course you brought up that nuance where it's like, okay, well, demographic being a big one, and that's going to kind of be what separates Lorcana's audience from kind of like the old guard TCGs, if we want to refer them to that.
Exactly. And that's just like the Star Wars. You're going to have the demographic is going to be different. You're going to have newer players. Like my son's only 7. He just started watching Star Wars and is obsessed with it. So you're going to have those people because all you see on Disney Plus is new Star Wars stuff coming out, new Disney stuff. Like it is constantly changing, even with like the animated series of stuff and everything like that for Star Wars. You're going to have a whole different demographic Where with Magic and Pokemon, like Pokemon, you're always going to have kids as demographic because the Nintendo Switch coming out with new Pokemon, you're always going to have that. But with Magic, you're not actually getting the younger kids unless they show you. So like I show my son Magic, but to him it's more complicated than Lorcana or Pokemon.
And even in terms of like art style, this is pretty interesting to me where it's like I don't know too much about high fantasy, but something about that tells me I think the kind of the high fantasy art style in general, like kind of that aesthetic has fallen out of favor recently. But maybe that's just from my vantage point sort of things.
I know for me it's for Magic since I've been playing, I think it's just changed because now it's like they just want money and they're just going to keep making new things. And I honestly, personally, I think Lorcana kind of scared Wizards of the Coast because now they are starting to dip into other fantasy like realms. So like you just had the Lord of the Rings set. You're now coming out with like you're doing a whole Doctor Who set and you're doing all this stuff. I think that they got a kind of a little scared with Disney because for me, Disney's like infinite. Like there's so many possibilities with the Dreamborn and the Storyborn and even the Floodborn. You have all this different things that you can do for this card game. And I think Disney got a little scared because they were like, hey, they're going at a whole new demographic. How can we keep this up? In my personal opinion.
It's an interesting take, but I think that's a really awesome opportunity to segue into what we were talking about earlier at the start of the show with Star Wars Unlimited. So for those of you who may or may not know, there is a Star Wars trading card game coming out. And recently there was a big article from Fantasy Flight Games who are producing Star Wars Unlimited. And they did something I didn't expect. And they did some stuff I really hope Ravensburger just straight up copies. So first of all, they announced the structure of a booster pack. So there's 16 cards. There are commons, uncommons, rares, and legendaries. So nothing too crazy. But the big thing they announced, which is interesting, is there's always a foil card. So that's something unique. I mean, like Lorcana has the guaranteed cold foil. But Star Wars Unlimited also announced that they have a hyperspace variant, which essentially is a full art extended art card. And then on top of that, you could find a foil hyperspace rare. And they have a showcase rare, which is super difficult to find. It is a completely new piece of art. It is full art, extended art with minimal iconography, minimal boxes. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the big thing that surprised me is they announced how difficult it is to find these cards. So on their website, you see that they have one foil card per pack, one legendary in every 8 packs, a hyperspace rare, 2 in 3 packs. A hyperspace rare or legendary is 1 in 15 packs. So hyperspace rare means that a rare card or legendary card has the extended like artwork. A hyperspace card is just a regular card with extended art. So similar to Lorcana, any card can have a hyperspace alternate art foiling or variants. And then you can have a foil version of a hyperspace card or a hyperspace rare or a hyperspace legendary. And they told us that a foil hyperspace rare or legendary is 1 in every 50 booster packs. And then a showcase card, one of these, is 1 in every 12 booster boxes. So that's going to be really hard to find compared to anything else in the set. And then on top of that, they told us the prices for their product. So we've got the pre-release box, and that's the big thing I wanted to bring up that Unlimited is doing. They're going to have pre-release events so that you can play the game before it officially releases. So generally, if you've never done a pre-release, it's like a week to 2 weeks before the official launch. So if you go to a pre-release event, you pay, in this example, $30. You get a pre-release box, which comes with 6 booster packs, 2 promo cards, rules, damage tokens, blah, 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 blah. So you're essentially going to be playing a sealed event, but you get your hands on these cards before anybody else does, which is really cool. And then we also found out that they're going to have casual play, organized play, which is cool, but they announced what comes in that set, and that's going to be a Spark of Rebellion launch kit, which is the name of the set. A pre-release box comes with booster packs that have 3 cards, and the website says that there will be 3 card blind packs of promos that are exclusive to weekly play. So you can't find them in booster packs. You have to get them at organized play. And it includes some special alternate art cards and hyperspace variants of cards that normally can't have one. So that's that full art bleed style of card. And then you earn yourself 1 promo pack each week you participate in weekly play. Please, play at your local store, yada, yada, yada. So we say all of that to say this. Right out of the gate, before Star Wars Unlimited has ever even hit the market, in fact, it doesn't even come out until 2024, they have not only announced what comes in a booster pack, they've announced the rarities, the alternate art variants, the pull rates, a pre-release kit, and organized play has its own unique set of promotional prizes. So local stores, unlike Lorcana, they don't have to hold back their own inventory to fulfill both sales and organized play. They can sell as much Star Wars Unlimited as they want because they've got a organized play kit to support players who are coming to weekly events. So bringing all of that information to the table, what do you think Lorcana can do to learn from what it's done currently and what it can do in the future? Because we also saw Disney Lorcana announce their organized play for set 2, Rise of the Floodborn. And it's basically the same thing we've seen before. There are 4 promotional cards now. There are 2 pins, and then the other Lorcana pin. And, having Disney pins is cool. Having pins that mimic artwork on the card is neat. I've got one of the Ariel and one of the Scar. But compared to like Star Wars Unlimited or Magic or even Pokemon's got some great kits. Yu-Gi-Oh! They've got OTS packs. I'm starting to feel like the promotional aspect is a little wanting for OP. Thoughts?
So I could start off. So I think I like it. The reason why is you see this a lot with Magic and Pokemon. Is pre-releases at local events. It pretty much gives people a chance to play the game or play the set they want before it even gets released. And for me, what I think I see is they're trying to push organized play a lot faster than Lorcana with those pre-releases. I think
with Star Wars Unlimited?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think they're going to push for that a lot better because I feel like they're going to make product. If they're already getting pre-release boxes a week or 2 prior to actual release date, that means that local game stores are probably going to have pre-orders of boxes like they do with Pokemon or Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! I know local game stores usually have like pre-orders for boxes, which we didn't see with Lorcana. I feel like Star Wars, once it's released, will kind of be a lot faster to get to organized play because people will have the products. They'll make the decks they want to make. It'll be a lot faster than with Lorcana having to wait maybe 1 or 2 more sets before they actually push for actual competitive play. I know Lorcana is aiming for next year for more organized competitive play, but I feel like with Star Wars, with all this product and how they're going to run things, I feel it's going to be a lot faster than Lorcana to get that organized play, but I also see it being a lot more successful just for getting product in hand based off everything they have, especially with the 2-player starter decks they're already having. Rather than just having a one-player starter deck, you buy just one for $35.99, and you could take it home and play with friends right off the bat. Just to get a feel for how the game plays, I think that is one aspect I really like, just because rather than trying to find two starter decks like Lorcana was, you're having a starter deck that's already made for two people to play. That right there is a huge win for them.
Oh, I forgot to mention a couple things too. Booster packs are $4.99. There are 16 cards, and there is a foil card in every pack. Also, in the two-player starter, which I'm glad you brought up, it has between the two decks, there are full play sets of 10 cards that can't be found in boosters. So this is not uncommon for Fantasy Flight. They generally want you to buy their starter box, starter set, whatever. But they've already told us you get full play sets. So if you buy one of the two-player starter sets just for yourself, that's it. Unlike, most trading card games where if you buy a starter deck, you'll get 1, 2, maybe 3 copies, but they don't give you a full play set. You have to buy multiple starters, or you have to buy singles or booster packs. So like right out of the gate, all of the two-player starter cards that are exclusive to that box set, you only have to buy one, and you've got everything you need outside of booster packs. I think that is a brilliant maneuver.
Oh, yes. Eliminating the old Yu-Gi-Oh! Blunder of typing into YouTube search bar 3X, whatever structure deck you just bought, and trying to play the deck out of that. Exactly. And so, I think, Tim really kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to like kind of organized play. Of course, encouraging people to have people in the store. 100% a great method of going about that. But if I may, I'd love to kind of talk about the alternate arts as well that we talked about. Of course, I assume that we'd put this in the show notes, but yeah, link will be there for anyone who wants to look at it. And, kind of calling back an old story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, I kind of want to, bring you into this narrative if you'll let me. But so it's kind of interesting, right? Because I feel like when it comes to alternate arts, there's too much, too little, and just right. And I feel like Star Wars Unlimited kind of hits that just right curve, because there's a time where, and I think Tim kind of brought this up as well earlier, but Magic feels like it's jumped the shark a little bit. Let's bring up Modern Horizons 2 as an example.
Oh no!
In terms of just alternate art, right?
Safe place, man. There's a safe place now.
Yeah, not. Don't worry about gameplay. We're tossing that entirely aside. But let's just take a look at the variants, right? You have, of course, the regular, cards that you can get in a set. There's extended art foil, retro frame foil, etched retro frame foil, right? I think there may be more as well, right? But it's at that point, it's also interesting because, again, with that just right idea, where I think it is important to bring up that sometimes when there are too many alternate arts, it starts blurring the line for kind of recognizability of the card and of the product when you play it. Of course, kind of an iconic example is the Dryad Arbor that just looks like a regular basic forest. So I think in terms of extended arts, alternate arts, that sort of thing, it's important to kind of have enough that has similar looking art, kind of like what Star Wars is doing here with this extended art plus, hyperspace thing, where it's any player can look at the card and recognize, okay, this is the card, this is what it does. Whereas, Lorcana, on the other hand, when it comes to their alternate arts, they're a little bit on the less side where, you kind of have to pack that incredibly unique enchanted rare to have that alternate version of the card. But I'd be interested in hearing if anyone else has anything to add to that.
No, I think you're right, because Star Wars Unlimited has the regular card. Then they have the foil version of that card. Then they have the hyperspace, which is an extended art version of the card with less stuff, more art, and then a foil version of that. So basically the card has 2 pieces of art and 2 potential foilings. And then on top of all that, there is a showcase, which is its own unique thing with its own unique foiling. But again, it's supposed to be 1 in every 12 boxes. So you're really not, that's essentially the enchanted rare. You're really not going to see it probably ever get played. You're probably going to see it
you'll see them more in PSA cases.
Yeah.
You will find people, you will have those collectors who will buy a bunch of product though, trying to find showcases, because you
Yeah.
always have those collectors who will buy multiple boxes just for a better chance to get that.
Right. But I like what Greg said. You can have a card like a Chewbacca card, and it could be the regular Chewbacca card that costs 60 cents. And then there's the foil version that maybe costs $1.50. And then there's the hyperspace version that maybe costs double, like it's $3. And then it's a foiled version of the hyperspace, so it's like $6. So you can kind of bling out your Chewbacca in whatever capacity you want. Do you want foil, non-foil, extended art, non-extended art? But it's the same card, and you can easily tell, hey, that is a Chewbacca. It's slightly shinier, or it doesn't have like a border. Okay, cool. But it doesn't really change the card itself. Unlike Magic, which had like, so many variants, and the art for all of them were so different. It was like, oh my gosh, this is really ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me as well because, when I first think about it, like at first glance, it's like, okay, well, I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't give the players the option at first glance. But then the more I think about it, it's like, okay, well, personally, when I'm playing a game of cards, the less I have to think about in terms of like flashy alternate art stuff, the better, because then I can focus on the game. So like even having to like stop and pause and be like, wait, which was that card again? Oh, it's an alternate art. It's a Godzilla version of a card that already exists. Okay, I know this card. That's where it kind of becomes a problem, And so I love the Star Wars Unlimited approach to it, where it's like, okay, there are different ways to plan out your deck. There are ways to get alternate versions of cards, but not in a way that muddies the waters for identification of the card during gameplay.
Right. I also want to bring up the collector aspect of Star Wars Unlimited versus Lorcana, because if I'm honest, Star Wars Unlimited has way more things I want as a collector, if I'm a collector, because like I said, you've got the hyperspace variant, the hyperspace foil variant, and then the showcase. So you're probably not going to care too much about the regular card. I don't even know if you're going to care about the foil regular card, but being able to find any card with a hyperspace, borderless alternate art, that's pretty cool. And the fact that they're supposed to be 2 and 3 packs shouldn't be too hard to find commons and uncommons. It's the hyperspace rares and legendary rarities that are 1-ish in every 15 packs. Those are going to be interesting to find. And then foiling them out is even harder to find because it's supposedly 1 in 50 packs, and you only get 24 packs in a booster box. So like essentially it's 1 in every 2 booster boxes, give or take. Actually, no, that'd be 48. So it'd be 2 booster boxes plus 2 packs to find a foil hyperspace rare or hyperspace legendary. So I find that interesting because, don't get me wrong, enchanted rares are hard to find, but like that's it. Once you have it, you have it.
Yeah, and to go off that, I think, like you say, it's good. And it's one place that Lorcana kind of missed at as a collector's aspect is people want to find those rares. So if you don't have product to find those enchanted, like in Lorcana, then you have to pay on the third party, where you're going to end up paying that $200, like I said previously on the show. But here, you actually have a chance to. And I think one thing that I like that Star Wars Unlimited is telling people beforehand, hey, this is the probability of you finding it. Where people aren't like, oh, I'm hoping I can pull it. Like other cards, like, oh, I'm hoping I can pull it in 1 box. No, at least with Star Wars Unlimited, they're at least telling you, hey, man, the least you got to do is buy 2 boxes. And you may have a chance at that foil hyper. Like that. They're telling you right there, giving you pretty much all the answers to the test as a collector of how to find them.
Yeah.
Just having that middle ground between like the 2 extremes where it's like, yeah, it seems like there's a big gap between what is just like a regular legendary pull and the Enchanted and Lorcana. And it seems like, yeah, Star Wars kind of rounds out that gaps by having some interim steps between those 2 extremes.
Now I'm going to play devil's advocate because I've also seen people on the internet say that Star Wars Unlimited has too many rarities and too many types and too many things. They like Lorcana being a card, a cold foil version of that card, and an enchanted rare, and that's it. That's not a wrong perspective. That's totally fine. But thoughts, is Lorcana too low on the alternate art rarity? Is it just where it needs to be? Because I think the other thing to consider with Lorcana is Lorcana, although it wants to have collectability and playability and potentially a competitive scene, it is a Disney trading card game that is pretty much aimed at younger players, aka children, teens, tweens, and those of us who are nostalgic for Disney. Because people who hate Disney aren't playing it, and people who want a complex card game experience like Flesh and Blood, they're not playing it. Like, there are very specific demographics that want to play Lorcana and very specific demographics that do not care at all about Lorcana.
Yeah. To that point, I'm actually surprised that there aren't more variants considering the Disney, brand friendliness or like Disney IP recognition, which there is there. But yeah, definitely a very fair perspective to just kind of, have the rarities that are there in Lorcana to know what's in the set. And of course, very helpful for many trading card game players' wallets, because I feel like with Lorcana product, there's a pretty clear stopping point, where it's like, okay, I'm close to the play sets of all of these. I know that enchanting is a bit harder to pull. I can have my hard stop be here on product. Whereas, I'd imagine that many people can kind of fall into that classic, card game pitfall on Unlimited, where they're just like, all right, 8 boxes in, haven't pulled the showcase, gotta keep on going,
That's
so
me. I'm in trouble.
It's more helpful to have that hard stopping point for sure, and I appreciate that perspective as well.
Yeah, and I'm with Greg on this one. So for Lorcana, I think it's right where it has to be, especially like you said, it's aimed towards kids and tweens and stuff like that. As a TCG collector like myself, I would like more. But like for my son and my wife, who's not really big into TCGs, like my wife plays just Magic. And one thing that she hates about Magic is that she can't have a whole play set unless she buys every single card. And she's like, I just don't have the funds for that. But with Lorcana, she's completed every single card. And so is my son. So it's good in that aspect for like new people who are just getting into TCGs who want to collect, to have a already full play set besides those enchanted cards. For example, like people who are trying to find Rapunzel's, like, or even the bell, just having one single bell to somebody who wants just the whole set, that's great. But if you're a real collector like myself or anything, if I'm going to want the whole set, I'm also going to need those enchanted. Where with Star Wars is probably just like that. So for younger people who want the full set, I think it's right where it's supposed to be.
Okay. Here's another proposition for the group. Star Wars Unlimited is pretty open about all the stuff they're going for. And I don't know if they've mentioned it because I haven't followed everything, but it seems like they're pretty straightforward, open-ended for both casual and competitive play right out of the gate, where Lorcana has definitely said, we're going to take some time, we're going to have some set releases, and then we'll make some announcements in the future. I feel like Star Wars Unlimited and Lorcana are not in the same lane of gaming, kind of like Greg was alluding to earlier. Lorcana definitely knows what it wants to be, and it's doing what it wants to do in the space it should be doing it. And I think Lorcana is doing a great job in that space. But a lot of people want to grab it and throw it into the big three argument of, okay, Lorcana is competing against Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon, which I really don't know if they are. Like, mechanically and sales-wise, sure, that's a true statement. But like in the design space and heart of the game, I don't really think it is. So does it really matter that Star Wars Unlimited has all of these rarities if Lorcana is doing what it needs to do? Because I don't know if there's going to be a lot of overlap, to be very honest.
So to go off what you said, I think you're right. I think Lorcana is doing exactly what they need to do because they know longevity of the game. I know I read an article that Ravensburger says they already have a 10-year plan. They have 10 years worth of card ideas, and they know what they want to do. So if they have that 10-year plan, they're doing exactly what they set out to do and make the game last up until 10 years. Where I feel like Star Wars, they kind of got to go off at the gate, personally, just because like you still have those people who don't really watch Star Wars. They don't really know what Star Wars is. Like they do, but they don't want to watch it. So I feel like if they want to compete with like Lorcana, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon and stuff, they have to get off to a hot start. And that's one thing that I've seen with a lot of TCGs is if they don't get off to that hot start where people are going to the events, they want cards, they want all this, it kind of dies. And one card game that I'm seeing that happen to right now, I'm probably going to get all the backlash for. I used to play it, trust me, is Flesh and Blood. It came off so hot to like compete with all the top 4 or the top 3. And it did that for a good amount of time, but now it's kind of like died down. There's not as many people playing at the events. There's not many people purchasing boxes and stuff like that, where Lorcana, it's getting the purchases. People are begging for more product. And I feel like Star Wars has to do exactly what like Flesh and Blood does so it doesn't die, where Lorcana has that 10-year plan already in sight and is just doing what they already planned out to do.
Interesting. I like that though. I do agree. Lorcana, as long as they get product into people's hands, they've got that longevity to kind of build up the mountain. And I do agree. I think Star Wars Unlimited and pretty much any new trading card game has to come out hot, kind of like anything coming from Bandai. So like One Piece, it got really, really hot and it's kind of burnt out. And then, you've got Star Wars, which we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know anything about it yet because it's not out. They're doing everything right on the front end. They're doing the promotions right. They're giving us news, announcements, price points, organized play information, rarities, pull rates. But it still doesn't tell us what the outcome will be because we don't know how much product will be available or if stores will sign up or, a bajillion different variables of, potential X, Y, and Z. But I think it's a good start for Fantasy Flight. I think they're going to do well, and we'll have to wait and see. But it is exciting. And here's the last thing I want to pick your brains about. A lot of events, a lot of companies. Actually, I'm pretty sure every trading card game I can think of, other than Lorcana, does a pre-release. Do you think we might see them start doing pre-releases in future sets since everybody wants it and people are asking for it? Do you think they'll cave in and go, okay, sure, we'll do a pre-release kit?
Ooh, yeah, interesting question for sure. I think it's tougher because, of course, Lorcana isn't necessarily a game that's expressly built for a format like Draft, not necessarily built for a format like Sealed. And, of course, with the hard locked color combination of 2 inks per deck, it is interesting to, theorize or speculate how a sealed format, would work in Lorcana, presumably around, 6 packs, 40 card deck, kind of what's seen, in similar.
Oh, like what
things.
We did at Gen Con? Yeah.
Yeah. Something similar to that. But, of course, a bit more, it puts more pressure on that aspect of the design where it's like, okay, well, let's, think about, normally it's just designing with okay, well, here's one color, here's another color, here's the 36 combinations, I think is what the number, turned out to be. And it's like, okay, well, with these permutations, we can see kind of how these inks interact with each other where, when it comes to pre-release, it's like, okay, the entire set, regardless of ink color, we need to be designing to at least make this pre-release experience, playable, for many people to play the game and have the previous experience and to walk out of it being like, okay, I had a great time. And I'm excited to go to another pre-release, of course.
Yeah, and I'm with Greg on that one. I think pre-releases would be great because it gives a chance to get product before the actual set comes out. But like Greg kind of hit it on the head where it makes it a lot harder, especially with Sealed and Draft, with that 2 color combination. If they did a different rule that said just for those drafts or sealed events you can do any color, I think it would be a little different. But with Lorcana, with that limitation, it makes it a lot harder to do a pre-release for that. Even though I would like to, it just makes it a lot harder. Where with Star Wars Unlimited, you don't have the color combo, I don't think, as of right now, that we've seen on any of the articles that they've pushed out.
Kind of.
Yeah. And since we don't really know, I think it'll be a lot easier where I know with Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't really have that limitation. It's just here's a couple packs, make your deck, have fun.
Yeah.
Where Lorcana is just strict to those 2 color combos, that it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, so Star Wars Unlimited, basically you have a leader and you have a base, and they supply a color of choice. So your leader will be like green, your base will be blue. So anything you play in your deck that's green or blue does not essentially have a color tax. So you can play a red card or a black card, and if you don't have those symbols on your base or your leader, you just have to pay an extra 2 mana or 2 resources. So you can play whatever you want. You just have that, quote unquote tax. Each pack comes with a leader and a base. So they've built both sealed and draft into the kits. So I wouldn't be surprised if they said either you have to play with that 2 color restriction, or you can, play whatever colors you want. But I mean, even still, there's plenty of 1-drop cards they've shown off that are just so good. You don't really mind paying 3 for them out of color because they're just kind of nuts. So there is a color restriction, and then there isn't, kind of, sort of, unlike Lorcana, where like you get A, you get B. That's it. There's no C.
Yeah, interesting. That's actually, from what I'm aware of, and I'm aware of plenty of trading card games, that particular type of restriction might just be a first. It's super, super compelling how they set that up.
Yeah, it's interesting because they have cards that have double of a single color. So if you're not running a leader and base of the same color, you have to pay the +2 tax. So interestingly enough, the way the color combinations work in Unlimited allows the designers to create really powerful cards. And if you play it in that double color spectrum that they want you to, you get a really cool card, a really powerful effect at a really good cost. However, you may or may not have, another secondary color. So like there's a double blue legendary card that lets you, defeat a character, draw a card, bounce a card, or give a shield to something, and shields just completely block damage. So it costs you 4 resources, but it's double blue. So if you play it in a deck that has 2 colors, like blue and green, it costs you 6. So you have the flexibility of blue and green themed cards, or you can play a double blue deck where you have a blue character leader and you have a blue base, and you pay that for cost and get an insane ability. But if you splash any additional colors, you have to pay +2 for everything. So I find it fascinating because they can kind of roadblock cards with incredibly insane effects. And if you don't, and the tax is 2 resources per symbol you don't have. So if you run like a red green card in a double blue deck, you're actually going to pay the casting cost plus an additional 4 resources, which you probably will never see, but you could do it if you wanted to.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a huge game of trade-offs, right? It's like, versatility versus flexibility. Definitely like those are the 2 big words that pop into my mind when thinking about this restriction. But of course, if you can get a cool combo with off-color cards and you don't mind spending that, extra resource to pull it off, then of course that's an option. And I'd imagine that, even if you aren't planning to play a deck in those colors, you'd have to take a look at that set list to be like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure this is what I'm locked into, but just got to check. And of course, I'm not sure how much is real about color identity in Star Wars Unlimited, but of course, getting access to something that your color doesn't typically do might just be good enough, right? Just to kind of cover your bases. But
yeah,
of course, I'd love to kind of keep an eye on the Unlimited stuff going forward to see kind of how that shakes up. Because like, honestly, this part about it, this part of that design is actually the most intriguing part to me. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, there is definitely color identity. And one of these days we'll talk about Star Wars Unlimited because it's just too hot not to talk about. But now is really not the time because we're just so far out. There's some to talk about, but like there's just really not enough.
It was like making D23 content for Lorcana.
Exactly.
Well, it's a lot more than D23 because D23 was like, here's some cards, no rules, no nothing. We're like, wait.
What do we do with this? Although we're cooking.
I'll put it like this. I think they've revealed like 60 something cards, and there's people who are already building and playing decks online. So like the game is alive and being played already. So like there's definitely enough we could postulate like, hey, but they've been interestingly sparse on the color combinations. So each color has cards, but definitely not enough to like define them and then be like, this is a definitively broken deck. It's like, here's a Boba Fett, here's an Akbar, here's a Darth Vader, here's Palpatine. Like, here's all the really cool stuff everybody wants to see. So I'm excited to see what comes out. But before we get on out of here, any last thoughts? I mean, it's a fun conversation to speculate because Lorcana is a fun game. And again, I want to make sure everyone understands we're not dunking on Lorcana, but it's not like a perfect game. There is no perfect game. There's always something every game ever made, trading card, video game, board game, they can learn and adapt and evolve over time, because if they don't, I won't lie, if this is all Lorcana ever is, I don't know if I want to be playing it in 10 years, because it's like, here's a regular card, here's a cold foil, here's a enchanted rare. Okay, but we were doing that in 2023 and it's 2033. Like, is there anything new whatsoever? So I feel like for Lorcana to be successful, there has to be evolution and adaptation just to match the expectation of the player base and the market. I think that's a fair expectation. So I'm excited to see what people want and how Ravensburger reacts, because they do listen. They absolutely listen to the people in the community. So last thoughts before we get on out of here, folks.
Yeah, I think you're right on track. I think you can already see it with the second set with the Disney 100 gift set that they're coming out with. They're already coming out with some alternative arts there. I think they have heard it. They look at, I'm sure Ravensburger's looking at every card game and seeing what they do and what they do better and not, so they can definitely make adjustments. I know that's why Magic and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh have been there for so long at the top of trading card games, because they see what these other people are doing and they kind of adapt. And I think Ravensburger has to do the same thing with Lorcana, or like you said, in 10 years, people will just stop playing it and it'll be a thing in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely interesting to see more extended arts, alternate arts, those sort of things, but also eventually at some point I would love to see an expansion of the design space of Lorcana itself. So interesting to see how it's going to shape up, especially with, this is the first time I heard of the 10-year plan, but planning things out 10 years in the future, I think there's, bound to be some changes that we'll expect for Lorcana in the coming years. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tim, before we get on out of here, why don't you tell everyone who you are, what your podcast, your YouTube channel, all of your content is about, and where they can find and listen to all your awesome stuff.
Yeah, thanks again for having me as a guest. I'm Tim from Your Dead Next Turn. You can find us on the Twitter, aka now X. You can find us on YouTube and on Twitch, where we play Magic, Pokemon. Lorcana is just a TCG community. It's usually me, my wife, or my son, and a couple of our friends.
And we'll definitely have links in the show notes so people who are listening can check that stuff out. And if you haven't yet, I'm going to give Wizards of the Coast a bravo. The new Wilds of Eldraine set, I actually bought some booster boxes. They have some cool cards with some cool art and alternate arts. And that just kind of got me thinking about the whole topic, because it was like we had the announcement from Star Wars, and then we had the new Pokemon 151, and then we have the new Wilds of Eldraine. It's like, man, all these like announcements and sets are really killing it. I would love to see Lorcana do some adjustments. And then they announced the Disney 100th. I'm like, oh man, they read my mind. This is cool. I wonder what'll come in set 3. Like, it's kind of neat to see card games evolve together as a group and kind of help push each other to be better along the way. And I'm just excited to see what Lorcana has to offer, because set 2 is just the beginning. Set 3 will be even better. Set 4 will be better than that. It's hopefully just going to improve better and better. And I really hope we see pre-release kits next year. I think that'll be so much fun.
I think Ryan Miller himself, that he even sees set 2s in card games as set 1.5s.
Yeah.
And, that's definitely the kind of vibe that we're getting from Rise of the Floodborn thus far. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this week's episode. We will see everybody in 2 weeks. It's been fun. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe us on Twitter and Facebook at LorcanaCast. And then you can watch us / listen to us on YouTube at Lorcana HQ, and we'll have links to the show notes, all of those things, yada yada. So remember, everybody, to take care of each other, have fun, and remember, Ohana means family, which means nobody gets left behind and nobody gets forgotten.
Just like you